Great. Well, good evening. My name is Angel Cortes, and I am the Associate Professor of History here at Holy Cross and also the Chair of the Humanities Department. And I am thrilled this evening to have this alumni panel featuring three stellar historians, all three products of Holy Cross, that you will hear a lot from tonight. About their background, their experiences at Holy Cross, and how they plan to use those experiences as they move forward in their careers. So my only request of the panelists tonight is that you give as full and honest answer to the questions that will be posed to you. In other words, no one-liners. Okay. No one-liners. To my immediate right is Thomas Brophy, 2018-19 graduate. To his right, Sam Mertz', 2014 history graduate. And on the far right, Colin Crawford, 2018 graduate. And so here's the first question. And what I'll do is I'll just pass the microphone over, and you can answer the question as you like, and then pass it on to someone else. We'll start out with a question of background. Where are you from, and how did you hear of Holy Cross?
Okay, so let's see. Most recently, I'm from Colorado Springs. I'm here now. I've been here a while. So, and I heard about Holy Cross after I did my freshman year in 2013 at George Mason out in Virginia. Was a computer science student. Found out very quickly that I was not ready for that life at all and left. Took a couple years off, which involved living in South Africa for a little while, then back home. And a lot of things happened. Ended up in a position where I decided I wanted to go back to school and finish out. Wasn't sure where I wanted to go, and at the time, I just turned 21, and at the time I had a lot of friends and a couple of my younger siblings at both Notre Dame and St. Mary's, and my mom was like, well, why don't you try Holy Cross, because they have rolling admissions, and it was like July of that year. So I applied in the last week of July, got accepted in the first week of August, got everything squared away in the second week of August to then start on, the first day of that fall semester. So it was very efficient.
Well, I grew up in the Twin Cities, just on the edge of the Twin Cities, maybe about 25 minutes from downtown St. Paul. And Holy Cross was not on my radar at all when I was a high school student. I ended up moving to South Bend through a variety of circumstances after high school for a year, took a year off, worked, was involved in some kind of mission work, Christian outreach. And then at the end of that year, didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I figured I'd best start college. So I moved back to Minneapolis, went to community college in Minneapolis for a year. And during that year, discovered that one, I thought I might want to study history. I took an outstanding course in American Studies at the community college, and because I had lived in South Bend, Holy Cross was now on my radar. So I ended up applying that fall of my freshman year of college, and I guess the rest is history. That's what brought me here.
Great. I'm from South Bend, Indiana. I attended St. Joseph High School, which for 2 years of my career there was just down the street. So I would pass Holy Cross on cross-country runs and track and field practice. So I was very close. I initially wasn't sure if college was right for me after high school, but I visited for a senior visit day and had a wonderful time and felt so welcome here at Holy Cross College. So that's how I decided to enroll here.
How did your first impressions of Holy Cross change after you arrived and began making progress in your studies?
Yeah. my first impressions were that the school was small, and that has not changed. But I think I was not expecting. I think at some point in my mind, I had the idea that I was going to transfer to Notre Dame because that's where all the serious people are, and I very quickly realized that there was just a deep richness in the studies, particularly in the history department, which is like I started out in history here because I liked history and I had a vague idea that I wanted to work in U.S. foreign policy, and so that seemed like a good start point. And Holy Cross didn't do political science, but then quickly found out that I was just really enjoying the work of the classes and the rich conversations and the writing and thinking, and so that combined with some other things kind of made it very easy for me to see the college as a place where I could really like dig deep and grow, rather than I didn't get into the school that I wanted to get into, quote unquote.
Yeah, gosh, for me, trying to think, just remember what my first impressions were. I was drawn to Holy Cross because it was small. I knew South Bend a little bit by that point, and I was drawn to Holy Cross being a Catholic institution for sure. One of the things that was sort of a rude but very good kind of awakening for me when I was in this is my first year, so sophomore year of college, because I was transferring. I took a course on the Civil War with Dr. Cortes here, and I thought I was a pretty good writer. And then I wrote a book review for his class, and he graded it, and it was a C, and I was shocked that that such a thing would have happened, and I thought I was better than this, or a better writer, more capable. And I realized that to do well at Holy Cross, particularly in the history program with its rigor, I was really going to have to lean in, and I was really going to have to give it my all, and I was going to need to start working at a higher level than what I had been doing. It was the best thing that could have happened to me. So thank you, Dr. Cortes, for that.
Yes, I began as a business major because it was the most practical thing. But I realized that I didn't really care about it, and I didn't really enjoy it, and I wasn't particularly good at it. Whereas with history, among the other kind of liberal arts courses I was taking, I really cared, and I was kind of good at it. And that was enough for me to switch majors and to start taking history courses. I too had a couple of rude awakenings, but I also realized the pleasure in improving and in becoming a better writer and reading more closely and more critically. So that was my first impression of Holy Cross.
So was there a particular subject in history or an era that you enjoyed the most? And if so, why?
I did enjoy and still do enjoy a lot the Cold War era of history. I just find that fascinating. Again, that dovetails nicely with my interest in things like foreign policy and whatnot. So for me, that's always fantastic. I will read any book you give me on the Cold War. I will love it, almost certainly. So, yeah.
The field that grabbed my interest right away was, I guess, the field of religion and politics, especially. I was just joking before this panel about these are the two topics you don't talk about at a dinner party. It's the stuff that I was most interested in, and I think honestly the reason I was really drawn to both fields was because these were the two venues in which people worked out the most important questions of their lives. What it is to live, and to live well, what society should look like. And that was a set of questions that grabbed me as a college freshman, college sophomore, and I guess I'm still asking those questions. It has never left.
Yeah, the first course I took was Dr. Cortes's early Jacksonian America course. And that sold me on history in and of itself, and particularly on 19th century history. It interested me because the world Americans lived in was still somewhat enchanted. Americans were still religious, but the country was kind of on the cusp of a more scientific outlook. Evolution, for example, starts to gain traction in American society, slowly and incompletely, but increasingly during the 19th century. So it's the tension between religion and science and faith and reason that really captivated me through the courses Dr. Cortes took about the 19th century in particular.
So the next question may appear to be somewhat basic, so I'll ask it, but then I'll explain kind of where it's coming from. Why is history important to study? Has your answer changed at all now from what it might have been when you were a student here? Reflecting back on, your time as a student and how you think about that now.
I would say it's important to study, in my view, because it allows you to make sense of a lot of the world as it stands right now. I don't know if that's the best way to word it, but I mean, for instance, if you don't know history, you're not going to get very far in understanding what's going on in the Middle East. You probably will have trouble even if you do know history, but there's layers to it. And you will just exist on the surface level. I also think, too, there's something important about if you're going to be a citizen of a democratic country, having some knowledge of why your country is the way it is quite important, actually. I started out here in 2016, which is quite a heady time. And it was very interesting to read a headline in some newspaper about X unprecedented thing happening, and then the next day walk into class and be like, oh, that wasn't actually unprecedented. That's happened before, multiple times. So outside of the instrumental aspects of what can a humanities degree do for your career or something, I think studying history is just the knowledge of the place you're in and the kind of the people you are with and the stories and what shapes the world around you is just incredibly important. Even if it's not your main focus in life or you don't use your history degree after you graduate, that way of thinking about the world is, I think, key to living well.
I guess I have two things as I think about that. I recall when I was a student here, it dawning on me, I think gradually, I don't think there was just an aha moment or something, how everything that has happened in history had many causes, and there wasn't just one thing. And I know it sounds kind of basic, but I remember learning about the Civil War and thinking, oh, there's just this whole host of things that converged that gave rise to this particular event. And it wasn't just one issue or one person or one thing. And this thing has been percolating for decades before a shot was ever fired. That really made an impression on me. And then I started to see it in all sorts of other history courses that I was taking while I was here. Since then, I after graduating, ended up doing a master's degree in history a couple years out of Holy Cross. One of the things, and again, this might sound sort of basic, but that really made an impression on me was just how all of these things that I was encountering in my everyday life, in my quotidian, day in, day out kind of existence, how it was all the product of history, of all of these things that had converged, and that stuff that to me had previously just seemed like kind of the wallpaper or just kind of the way reality was constructed, and that's neither a good nor a bad thing. It's just an observation of what the thing is. Those would be, I don't know, two things that strike me.
Right. Yes, since graduating, I've come to understand history and the discipline as a model for good citizenship. You have only to open the book review section of a scholarly historical journal to see scholars disagreeing with one another in civil but constructive ways most of the time. Or to go to a working group meeting and to workshop a work in progress with a faculty member or another student, talking about their work and offering constructive criticism in ways that it might further the field has been such a valuable experience. It's a part of the discipline, and I think that if more Americans learned the skills that we learned in Dr. Cortes's class, we'd be a lot better off as a civil society. Weighing different perspectives and being open to revising our ideas and our preconceptions about the way things are. Being able to name our assumptions about the way the world works. All of that is important, and I think that's the value of a history degree.
Sam, you've said something already about this, so you can skip if you like. But the next question is about how the panelists will apply what they've learned at Holy Cross to their careers, either in the present or as they move forward.
Yeah, that's a good question because I don't work in a history-related field at all right now. I work for a tech startup in San Francisco doing technical customer support. I work remotely, thank God. And so the connection points are not obvious per se. I will say that the stuff I use from my history degree primarily is the ability to condense and communicate complex ideas to people who are non-experts in your given field, both for customers but internally within the company too. That ability to communicate, to think clearly, speak clearly, and write clearly, that I think a history degree particularly instills, is invaluable if you want to actually move forward in your career in any field. Yeah.
I guess I've got one thing. So at present I am a high school teacher and teach high school history, and of the 10 or 12 students I think who were history majors in my graduating class, I think I'm the only one who actually does history on a day in, day out basis. Everybody else, ended up on other career trajectories. But I suppose this is echoing Thomas. This afternoon, I was grading a bunch of high school American history papers, and I learned to write and be a much more disciplined writer at Holy Cross, and in the history program in particular. Learning to make an argument, to undergird your argument with evidence, and it's one of the cool things about what I get to do is I get to take many of those things that I gleaned here at my time at Holy Cross, and I get to hopefully pass those on to students that I've got in front of me these days. So I use it every day. My goodness.
Yes, so I am a first-year student in Notre Dame's Ph.D. in history program, and everything I learned, everything we did in classes here at Holy Cross is directly applicable to the program at Notre Dame. So writing book reviews and evaluating sources, participating productively in class discussions, navigating libraries, that's all super relevant, as well as showing up to class on time or showing up at all, organizing yourself well for high volumes of work throughout the semester. Those are skills that have been of such a great service to me that I still use on a daily basis today.
Great, thank you. So Thomas, what would you tell a prospective student who's interested in history?
Interested in history as a subject or interested in the study of history here? Okay. I would say it's awesome. I would say I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I experienced thriving in it, and I think it is a fantastic. I just think it's a fantastic subject to sink your time into and to learn. And it's just so valuable in your day-to-day existence, in the background or in the foreground, however you use it. And I would say too, like in particular with Holy Cross, like this degree will get you into more doors than you think it will. For instance, before I ended up doing what I'm doing now, right as I was graduating from Holy Cross, I took a big swing at joining the CIA. I got through both interviews and the psych eval. I didn't end up getting the job, but my Holy Cross history degree got me into the door at, the mythical, magical institution that is the CIA. I only say that not because it's necessarily the most impressive feat to not get hired by the CIA, but just so like this isn't a second-rate degree, and it's not a second-rate program. Like you can get to some spots just on the resume, if not, knowing people, all the other things.
Is this for me too? No. So my thought, if I was talking to this hypothetical student, is I would say, get ready for two things. Get ready to work harder than you've ever worked before in your academics. Get ready to you. Reality is going to come alive to you. There's this whole world of ideas, and you don't even know yet what you don't know. And going through the Holy Cross history program will open that up to you, especially if you're willing to throw yourself into it and to work really hard. It's great. It was the best thing that could have happened to me for college. Thrilled that it did happen.
Great. I would tell a prospective student that your life is bigger than the classroom, that you will do things, perhaps some of the most meaningful things in your college career beyond campus. I had the opportunity to go to India with Holy Cross and returned, had a wonderful time there, and tried to convey this very positive experience that I had to friends and family. I was reading a book about American representations of India and realized to my horror that kind of the forms I was using, the language I was using to represent this positive experience came from British colonial Orientalist thought. I wanted to understand how something, a way of speaking that was hundreds of years old, crept into the way I spoke about an experience I had in the 21st century. And that has helped inform my potential dissertation project at Notre Dame. So I think remember that the things that matter to you personally will matter to other people a lot too. People will want to understand where you're coming from through your work. And they'll want to read work that is informed by vital, important, urgent personal experience.
Okay, so as we transition here towards the last couple of questions, how can Holy Cross change to be a better institution for future students?
Part of the trouble is I haven't been around for a few years, so like maybe the changes already have occurred. I would say I don't know if this is a change per se versus just an encouragement, but more networking opportunities is always good. I've gotten where I've gotten because of people I know primarily, and I think that's the story for a lot of people, both inside and outside history. And so I think the chance to network with people who are relatively like high in their career or later in their career, who can help get you in places, help show you, like give you creative ideas of what you could be doing with your life, I think that is just will never, like, you can't overstate that, how important it is. So the more opportunities to do that with the most kind of like high caliber people that can be brought around, I would say.
Gosh, I had such a positive experience at Holy Cross that thinking about, gosh, what should they do better? I don't know. I've been gone a long time too. Holy Cross needs a bigger library. That was my thought when I was an undergrad, and I see it's still the same library. But that'd be my only thing. More books. That'd be great.
Right, I too had an overwhelmingly positive experience here, but I think funding more faculty positions is important. Easier said than done. Oh, well, yeah, I mean, that was fundamentally what was behind that statement. But, right, so there was nothing missing from my education here. But no one person should have to teach every course in the field of American history. That it goes for history and theology and philosophy and all of the humanities. Funding more faculty positions in the humanities would be good for everyone. Yeah. What a play.
All right, guys. If you could wake up one morning to a front page story on Holy Cross, what would you want that heading to read?
I don't know, I want the college to get, like $1 billion gift or something, right? Like monster endowment money. Yeah, I don't know. I think, to be totally serious, I think just I love this college a lot. It's treated me very well, and I want it to thrive. So I would love to wake up to a headline of somebody giving it a ton of money, north of 100 million. I think that'd be a worthy headline.
In its first year, Holy Cross College football team defeats Notre Dame.
It's hard to top money in football, but I would love to see the return of the global immersion program and more study abroad opportunities for students here. I hear that some people are able to take advantage of opportunities from other campuses, but it would be wonderful if we had kind of an organic program here on campus at Holy Cross.
Okay, so my last question, and this I suppose can be fielded by anyone who feels like they haven't already elaborated on this, and that is, what do you consider to be the greatest value of a Holy Cross education?
I would say, at least particularly within the history program, because that's the one I know the best, is the greatest value of it is that a Holy Cross education takes itself seriously and kind of demands that you do as well. That's not true in every single instance, I know, and compared to things I've heard from other people, like I married into a family of Notre Dame grads, for better or for worse, and my wife will tell you about how her experience of being at Notre Dame and how it wasn't all that hard to be an undergrad over there. And I think it's actually more serious around here in the day-to-day educational environment based on what I've seen and heard. And that's really valuable. Like, it's hard to quantify. You're not going to realize that until you're put in a situation that really demands your kind of mental faculties to be sharp. But that will come in handy. Like, trust me, that's a bigger deal than you think it is. It's hard to put on a resume. It will come out in an interview.
One of the things that I so appreciate about my time at Holy Cross was how available my professors were to me. I was well into college before I realized that my peers at many other bigger institutions didn't have this experience. I mean, I think of Dr. Cortes as someone I could drop in on during office hours, and sometimes not during his office hours, but he was in there, and he would drop whatever he was doing to talk ideas with me, whether it was things directly related to the course or things adjacent to the course. I had this experience with him, but I could name 4 or 5 other professors for whom that was the same, and I thought, what an incredible opportunity I had to get to be mentored by these men and women who were serious scholars and who were willing to take the time of day for an undergrad like me, and that was such a gift. And I'm to this day I'm still grateful for it, and I think back on those conversations quite fondly.
Yes, related to that, I think community is the greatest value that Holy Cross has. I was well educated here, but I was also well loved, and that matters a lot. It affected how I lived in intentional community as a Jesuit volunteer, and how I related to my housemates. But it also set the standard for what I expect from communities that I've engaged in and lived in since I graduated from Holy Cross. I hadn't heard the term cura personalis, care for the whole person, until I got to Marquette University, a Jesuit institution. Sorry, brother. I know. But I felt like I had encountered that in practice, care for the whole person here at Holy Cross, years before I got there.
Great. Thanks very much, gentlemen. We do have a few minutes for some questions. So let's go ahead and field them. Please don't be shy.
What is your favorite Dr. Cortes book?
I'm not starting this one.
Dr. Cortes moment.
Oh, jeez. You can't answer that. Sounds like he's handing him the mic anyway.
We were talking about poetry in medieval Latin American universities, and you talked about the value of reciting poetry and what that does for people. It was something I would have expected from an English course, but it was just so profound, and that has always stuck with me. I'm attuned to recitation when I encounter it, either in person or in the historical record, because you stated that. That's such a small moment, but that speaks to how profound these history classes could be sometimes, the value of art for the human person.
I don't know if this is a moment so much as a consistent theme, but Dr. Cortes, as I'm sure many of you know, uses very large words in his lectures, and my vocabulary needed to grow as an undergrad. And so what I would do is he would use a word, and I would say, I don't know what that word is. So I would write down in the margins as I was taking notes what the words was, and I would look it up afterwards, and I probably have several hundred words that I could attribute to your using them in class. So how about that?
Yeah, I think similarly, this would happen multiple times throughout a given semester in a given class, but there'd be like in any given lecture, there'd be a moment where you'd like get really excited about some tangent and going, and inevitably there'd be some sort of like, you'd put your head in your hands and be like, oh, Dios mío, and just shake your head. And I always just found that hilarious. It's not particularly noteworthy, but I don't know, just like, yeah, that's what comes to mind immediately.
Thank you. I was going to, as you were speaking, I was going to ask a couple of questions, and then Dr. Cortes beat me to it. So I'm going to make a comment or two and then ask my question. In my undergraduate work, I was an English major. And Dr. Cortes, I just want to say, I was many years here in the Writing Center. And a lot of students that had a rude awakening. All his students came in there in Dr. Cortes's class. And I thank you for that, though, because I did too. I took history at Notre Dame undergraduate work. And it still ticks me off. It was a term paper, maybe a typographical error. It's a footnote. I left off the period. It took 3 points off.
Damn.
It still irritates me, but
That would irritate me too.
these history teachers sometimes teach us how to write. My question is, and this may sound like a capsule question, what do you think is one thing, if you had to single out one item, one thing you learned here at Holy Cross College that best prepared you for the real life that you met after you left the college? That best prepared you to face life, whatever you did. What do you think that one thing was? Or is?
Well, one thing that I think about when I think of what Holy Cross, the impact that it had on my life is I was an okay high school student. Probably, there were some things that I was not so adept at, and other things I probably did halfway decently at. But Holy Cross is where the intellectual life became alive for me. I think I even said somewhere in my own capstone experience, or sometime around then, I described my time at Holy Cross as an intellectual renaissance. It was this whole world of ideas opened up to me that I had been ignorant of previous to that, and that shaped me back then, but it continues to shape who I am today. And I'm very grateful to the institution and to my professors who did so much for me through those years. It still shapes me.
I think practicing charity in class discussions has been very helpful for me. You have a class of both first years and graduating seniors. The level of ability is going to be very, varied in that one class. So I think practicing patience and cultivating understanding, and again offering constructive criticism, has been helpful for me as a scholar and as a teacher. I was able to serve as a teaching assistant at Marquette. And I will be a teaching assistant again starting next year at Notre Dame. So it's made me a better teacher too. Office hours are a place of grace instead of somewhere where, the student is berated. I hope to help them, become better students and better historians to whatever degree I can. So practicing charity has been the most important thing at Holy Cross.
Yeah, I would say, and again, this goes particularly to the history program and Dr. Cortes's leadership of it, is I would say I learned a lot about how to operate as a professional in some sense, like it sounds kind of stupid and basic, but like how to show up on time, like do the hard work, be in when you're in, and then when you're off, be done. To bring your A game consistently day in and day out as best you can. It's not every day is perfect, but to go in with that mindset that you're here to work hard, and in the writing, same thing. It's been brought up a bunch, but Cortes demands your A game in writing, if you know, you know. But that's really valuable, just that. Having to work through that semester after semester and work through having to do 2 research papers in a semester and that sort of thing, that very well prepares you for, I think, a lot of the rigors of professional life. Yeah. Yeah, I wrote a paper called Lessons Unlearned, and it was about European observers during the U.S. Civil War and how I was trying to get at why you see a bunch of military innovations in the U.S. Civil War. You see them reappear in World War I, like things like machine guns, trench warfare, new kinds of cavalry tactics and things. But there are a number of wars that occur in Europe between the Civil War and World War I. And so why didn't one of the earlier wars, and in my case I was looking at the Franco-Prussian War, turn into kind of the horrors of World War I beforehand? Like, why don't, and you see bits and pieces, but you don't see the whole thing occur. And so I wrote about that, and I'm particularly proud of it because it got published in the Honors Journal that semester or the semester after, whenever that occurred. So,
paper that I think I'm the most proud of this from my time at Holy Cross was I wrote a history paper. It was a course with Dr. Cortes on the Gilded Age, and it was on the fundamentalist controversy of the early 20th century. So this has to do with higher criticism of the Bible, as well as evolution and the debate around faith and science. And I don't know that the paper was like a novel interpretation or some like new contribution to the field. I don't think it was at all. But this was Dr. Cortez's wheelhouse, and this was something I was deeply interested in. And I remember spending a lot of time going through primary sources, secondary literature on it, met with Dr. Cortez at least a time or two, maybe even three, to talk about it. And it, I'm just really pleased with how it turned out, and I learned a lot.
Yes, I wrote one about alcohol consumption and piety in the Virginia colony, in colonial Virginia, and it's not an accident that it was fun to write. It was the best paper I think I wrote, and it was fun to write. It reminded me of being a little kid and building a big Lego set on a rainy day. So that kind of attuned me to the relationship between enjoying this vocation and producing something worthwhile. I also submitted it to DES. Thomas mentioned it being published in the journal, which was great. I liked the large cash reward that came from that. Yes, so yeah.
I also will interject here that Sam Mertz has also published a paper in a scholarly journal. So all three of these guys are accomplished scholars. Do we have another question?
From my personal experience, when people ask me what my major is and like my plans for the future, and I'll mention history, they assume I'm going to teach. And so when I tell them I don't want to teach, they're like, oh, what else can you do? I'm just wondering how that like kind of the stigma of like what can you do with a history degree, how that applies in the real world like during job application.
yeah, so I feel that very deeply because I also got a lot of those questions, and I do not teach, right? I work for a tech startup. I've held other jobs. I've done sales, and like I mentioned earlier, took a big swing at something like the CIA. I think the main thing you're going to run into is you are going to have to pick, like, what are you actually applying to, and how are you going to convince them that your history degree, if the degree is the most important thing, is going to like matter, right? So your history degree is not going to get you a full stack engineering job at one of the like FANG tech companies out there. It's just not, right? Which is fine. If you applied to that and got rejected, well, tough. But it will get you in a lot of other places, assuming you can kind of like massage it into what you need it to be, right? The ability, again, to think clearly, to speak clearly, to write clearly goes a long way, especially when you start shooting for like management type jobs and things like that. So some of it is pick your battles, but some of it is like think outside the box, right? If you've got other things that you can bring to the table, like I'm in my position now because I got a bunch of customer service experience from my previous job, and I have a bunch of tech experience that I've just kind of kept up on passively in my personal life that I was able to bring to bear to convince them that even though I'm not a developer, I can still learn, and I can still pick it up really fast. So, yeah, that's kind of what I would say is like teaching is the obvious route. There's a reason it's the obvious route, but you are not. I don't think you are at all limited to that, and a lot of it is going to be more about creativity in your applications, knowing people, network to kingdom come. Yeah.
I suppose I don't know that I'm the right person to answer this question, in that when people would ask me that, oh, so you're going to teach, I would say, yeah, I kind of think I will. And here I am. I'm still doing that. Though I think, on the 10 or so history majors and minors who graduated with me in 2014, I think I'm the only one who's actually a history teacher. A couple are in careers as officers in the military. One works, I think, in the registrar's office at Notre Dame. Another went to law school after he worked in politics for a couple years in Washington, D.C. I'm sure there's a couple others that I'm missing, but my sense and my own experience, and I have a feeling that my classmates would say the same, was that going through the history program at Holy Cross makes you a very well-read, intelligent, highly employable human being, and none of them has pursued history as a vocation, and all of them, to the best of my knowledge, are moving forward in their careers. Yeah.
Yes, I too am fairly certain that I want to teach, but I have friends who have gone on to work for the State Department, who have gone on to law school. I have a friend at Notre Dame who wants to go into publishing. If you want to stick directly with history, there are public history positions in museums, and for like local government, municipalities and whatnot. There's also digital history, so there are a lot of options. Yes, yeah. Don't let them categorize you and convince you that you have to teach. There are, yeah, exactly, lots of other options, and I'm happy to talk with anyone afterward as well, about potential careers and applying to grad school too.
Can I add one more thing? The other thing too that I think a history degree does really well if you apply yourself to it, and that people don't talk about, is you have the potential to become a really good storyteller. And like that is crazy valuable. If you can contextualize things into stories to communicate to people, like, oh boy, you are going to be like listened to a degree you don't understand. So like get good at that. Get good at understanding how to, not just about history, but about all sorts of stuff. Like be able to talk in stories and like to communicate information in stories, right? Like have those things in the back pocket at dinner parties and whatnot, right? When people ask you, like, what's your favorite historical thing? Pull out a story and blow people's minds. It does happen. And that will get you ingratiated with people in a way that is hard to, like, again, a lot of this is hard to quantify. You can't really put that on a resume like you're a hella good storyteller, but those like dinner parties and those networking events, those will get you places that you did not expect to get.
Do we have any other questions?
Having been here for a number of years and seen students, this is indicative of any major, there's times where I hear students say, I just want this semester to be over, I'm ready to get on to the next class, I'm ready to move on. But now there's some hindsight, and you guys have actually done just a beautiful job reminiscing on tonight. I'm curious if there were any class that you could go back and take again, that you'd say, oh man, I really love my time in this class, or I love that work, or I didn't actually realize at the time how much the lessons or work or something from this might be, if there were a class here at Holy Cross that you could take over, presumably within the history program, but otherwise so, to be helpful, what you'd say, because some of these students may be in that class right now. That'd be interesting for them.
I've got an answer to this one. So I almost took a course with a gentleman who used to teach here, Dr. Chris Biding. It was on early medieval Europe. I was even registered for the course for half a second or so, and I ended up dropping it due to a variety of things. And now I teach medieval history, and regularly I think, oh, darn it, why didn't I take that course with Dr. Biding? That would have made my life so much easier.
Sure, I would probably take colonial Latin America again. It was a course that I was anxious about being in because it wasn't U.S. history, but that was the opportunity in it to engage with a historiography I wasn't familiar with. And the southwestern U.S. has become important to my life since then. So there's also a personal connection I would have liked would like to explore again through a course like that.
I think I would take. I am forgetting the specific title of the class, but it's where we read the book on how early native groups were living off the land and whatnot, and kind of changes in the land. Yeah. So.
It's colonial America.
Okay. Yeah. I thought that was infinitely fascinating to get that era of history, because I just learned a ton, and it's one of those things where if you don't keep up on it, it does slip your mind, especially as life moves on. So I'd love to take it again and just be able to dig into that again, being a few years older and just maybe more focused on it than I was. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Well, if there are no other questions, please help me in thanking our three terrific panelists for this evening. And thank you all for turning out tonight. Have a good night.
Guys, thanks so much. Yeah, thanks for putting this together. This is great. It's terrific. Thanks so much. Yeah, I'm eternally grateful for all of your examples in class being here tonight. Yeah, you're setting a tremendous example for the guys out there.